headlines on Reporting Scotland this Thursday lunchtime. The row over the Chief Constable intensifies with fresh revelations about the meeting between the Justice Secretary and the police watchdog. And is this the face of Robert Burns? New technology reveals how the National Bard may have looked. Good afternoon. The former chair of the Scottish Police Authority has revealed that the Justice Secretary said it was a bad decision to allow the Chief Constable to return to work when he was still under investigation for misconduct. Andrew Flanagan told MSPs he was never explicitly asked to reverse the decision, but felt he had no choice after 2 meetings with Michael Matheson. Stephen Gordon reports.
Another day at Holyrood, another instalment of the Chief Constable saga. Phil Gormley, now facing 7 complaints against him, which he denies, remains on special leave. But in November he was set to return, until the Scottish Police Authority reversed a unanimous board decision. It followed exchanges between the SPA chair at the time and the Justice Secretary.
He told me that he thought it was a bad decision. It was clear to me that he did not want the Chief Constable to return at that point.
And then, in another meeting later that day,
it was clear that the Cabinet Secretary was still very unhappy, but he changed to discuss the process rather than the decision itself.
Michael Matheson.
Yesterday, Michael Matheson rejected opposition claims he'd abused his power, insisting he raised entirely legitimate questions about the well-being of those who'd complained and complaint investigators' Perk's lack of involvement. Today, Andrew Flanagan told MSPs he hadn't explicitly been asked to change his mind.
I couldn't say that I had been directed to, but the position I was in, I felt I wasn't in a position to move forward with that decision.
So you felt you had no choice but to pause the decision?
Yes.
At First Minister's questions, the morning's evidence was top of the agenda.
So the independent chair of an independent body has 2 meetings with the Justice Secretary, where in the first he's told he's made a bad decision, and after the second he's left in no doubt that he has to reverse it. How can that possibly tally with what SNP ministers have claimed in recent weeks?
First Minister.
Andrew Flanagan clearly said that he hadn't been requested by the Justice Secretary to change his decision, and he wasn't directed to do so. Questions were asked, and as I said last week, and I repeat again today, I absolutely am of the view that the Justice Secretary was right to ask those questions.
Amid the fallout, Phil Gormley's absence is reviewed every 4 weeks. The SPA have to decide today whether it continues. Stephen Godden, Reporting Scotland.
I'm joined now from Holyrood by our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, does this put the government under more pressure on an issue that's been rather difficult for them?
Yeah, I think it does. It's been a tough one, and Ruth Davidson has prosecuted it now repeatedly and, frankly, also rather effectively in her pursuit of this topic. But you have broadly 2 answers from the government. First of all, saying that the point that was made there, indeed conceded by Mr Flanagan, that he wasn't actually instructed to make a change of decision. Then you have the evidence given by Susan Deakin, the new chair of the SPA, to Parliament earlier this week, saying that she believes the decision was the right one and was taken properly. Now, the government will rely upon those 2 broad tranches while the opposition parties continue to pursue them.
And talking of pressure, more of it likely this afternoon over sectarian behaviour at football legislation.
Yeah, much more. The law, you remember, was changed 6 years ago to allow direct targeting of sectarianism connected to football. There's a measure being advanced by Labour James Kelly this afternoon. He believes, and I think he is right, that he has sufficient opposition support to scrap the Act, to abolish the Act. And that will please those football fans who feel it targets them unfairly. It will displease others who feel that perhaps it may send the wrong signal in Scotland. I think it likely, the government I think are effectively conceding they're going to lose this afternoon. I think that they will try and find some way of perhaps recreating hate crime legislation, perhaps in a different way, perhaps connected to the review that is underway right now by Lord Bracadale.
Brian Taylor, thank you very much. The main rail line between Glasgow and Edinburgh remains shut following yesterday's landslip. Rail users are facing considerable disruption after mud and rocks fell onto the line at Winchborough yesterday because of heavy rain and winds. Commuters in many parts of the country were affected this morning. And ScotRail say passengers should expect the line still to be closed through this evening's rush hour. 3 teenagers have been arrested after a schoolboy was stabbed in the stomach outside a school in Glasgow. A 17-year-old and 2 16-year-old boys are expected to appear in Glasgow Sheriff Court over the alleged assault near All Saints Secondary in Barmullagh. The 14-year-old victim is said to be in a stable condition. It's Robert Burns as he's never been seen or heard before. On this 259th anniversary of his birth, Scotland's national bard was reborn in digital form. Scientists from Liverpool John Moores University have made a unique talking animation of the poet's head. Willie Johnson reports.
Wee sleekit, cour and timorous beastie, oh, what a panic's in thy breastie.
It's one of Burns' most famous poems, and here he is, apparently reciting it. This animation, the best attempt so far at replicating how Burns might have looked and sounded in the flesh.
But Moosey,
the idea came from fellow Ayrshire poet Rab Wilson, whose voice Rabbi has been given.
O mice and men gang after gley, and leave us noch but grief and pain for promised joy. This is the closest that we've got to how Burns would have looked in the life. You know, people will say, oh, he doesn't look like the portraits, or he doesn't look at the images we know of Burns. Well, this is the real Burns, and it's based in science.
For more than 230 years, this has been the accepted face of Robert Burns, frozen in time by Alexander Nasmyth in 1787. Now, 21st century science and technology has enabled new life to be breathed into the bard. The starting point was this skull cast, taken from Burns when his body was exhumed at the time of his wife Jean Armour's funeral.
We laser scanned that.
From the cast, a 3D head was constructed. Then came the complex task of adding the 4th dimension of speech and movement.
That's quite a difficult concept, and what we wanted to do is to keep it as realistic as possible. So to take real speech and movement and map that onto the Burns head.
Thou art blessed compared with me, the present only toucheth thee. But oh, I backwards cast my eye on prospects drear, and forward, though I canna see, I guess and fear.
Judith thinks he looks like Glenn Michael. Anyway, give us the forecast.
So do you now, don't you? It's got to be in your mind. Thank you very much. Beautiful scene here sent in by one of our weather watchers last night of the Northern Lights. Absolutely stunning. That's from Shetland. This afternoon, a lot of dry weather in the forecast for areas certainly north of the Central Belt, up towards Stirlingshire, Perthshire, Aberdeenshire. In the south, we're seeing a band of showers moving in as we speak, and 1 or 2 showers still peppering the far north as well. But light winds this afternoon and highs of around about 5 or 6 Celsius. As we head into the evening, we do lose those showers from the south. The showers very light and few and far between across the far north. So generally a dry night, lengthy clear spells. This will allow a fairly widespread frost to form tonight. And where we saw the showers today will be a risk of icy patches as well. Temperatures down to around freezing for many of us, even as low as -4 in parts of the Highlands. We could see the odd mist patch by morning. So a welcome ridge of high pressure building in tomorrow. A nice settled day. Beautiful day, a cold start with that frost first thing and that ice risk as well, so be aware of that. But a gorgeous day to come, plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunshine. We start to see cloud building in the far west as we head through the course of the afternoon. And even though those temperatures are quite cool, it will feel really quite pleasant with light winds in that sunshine. So if we take a look at the pressure chart, here's our weekend weather. We've got this low pressure, these weather fronts introducing rain, winds picking up as well. So for Saturday, we're looking at a wet and windy start with gales, even severe gales across the far north. The rain does eventually clear away, it does turn noticeably milder, and then we're looking at plenty of showers. That's your forecast, Sally.
And I'll see you at 6:30 tonight. Goodbye.